Hello, friends. Welcome to the Writer's House, kind of. Uh, we are so excited, so happy, and maybe just a little sad or pre nostalgic because the fact that we're doing this reading means that our program is almost coming to an end. But I'm not going to say too much about that because I don't want to upset any of the brilliant, kind, hilarious, amazing 25 readers who will be joining us tonight. My name is Jamie Lee Jocelyn, and I work at the Kelly Writers House uh, in a couple of ways, but most importantly, most relevant to tonight, I am the director of our summer workshop for young writers. And when these 25 people and many, many hundreds, thousands, millions more applied for this program back in March, they had no idea that they would be participating in this program via a grid of faces on their laptops for 10 days. But here we are. We are all Zoom champions by this point. And one of the benefits to doing our program this way is that we get to be live with all of you here right now. So I am going to essentially be just the person directing traffic and getting out of the way tonight so you can hear a little bit from each of our 25 readers. One thing I will be doing by way of non sequitur introduction for each of these readers is I will be reading a random I remember that they have written today about the last 10 days, just so anybody listening or watching gets a little sense of what we've all been through together over these last 10 days. So the first I remember that I will share with you is I remember when Tyler and I wore cowboy hats and read our poetry to everyone. That is not relevant to our first reader, but our first reader tonight is Madison Grant. Hey, Maddie, could you just unmute yourself? It's okay. Do you have, Zach, any tips for how to what the setting is? This hasn't been a
Okay, I'm going to use my headphones because that's what I've been using in the past, and I could not figure that out. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm Maddie. I am from Clemson, South Carolina, and tonight I'll be reading an excerpt from my essay that I wrote called Something Like Love or the Vanishing of Time. What you should know for this one is that it's about a little toy Vespa that I picked up when I traveled in Italy for a little bit. When it was time to leave my 3-week venture in Italy, I packed it between rolls of unwashed clothing and crumpled up poems written on the sheets of a 28-year-old journal bought in the streets of Sicily. To this day, it's both the most I've spent on a journal and the cheapest real leather one I've encountered. I bought it out of shame originally because the woman in the store had gotten cross with me for touching the bindings and untying the strips that held the spines closed, and being American hated confirming the bad tourist example. I bought it as some gift to her for not kicking me out of her shop, but looking at it now, it's become some beacon of a world of more to me. Both are obnoxiously red, freely Italian in nature, and a little too touristy for a native to want them. Different in the way that the Vespa, while Italian, was made in Vietnam and is carved out of a cheap porcelain alternative. It's odorless and inoffensive and makes a quiet tinking noise when wrapped with the edge of a fingernail, and that the journal is leather bound in Sicilian culture and was born from a family who had been making their own books in the heart of Italy for centuries. It smells like chocolate cornettos freshly baked on a side street with a cobblestone after a rain. It's a collective. To this day, the Vespa sits on my grandmother's shelf in her den beside the Eiffel Tower statuette my brother bought her back from Paris, and the little telephone box from England, all completing the role of innocuous culture, a sight that says, hey, I know more. And yet, when I see the Vespa gathering dust on the shelf in this nowhere town, in a nowhere country, on the verge of collapse from its own growth, I wonder if it would have been happier sitting with the stickers and snow globes in the old man's shop in Spoleto. I feel like I've stolen it from a dear lover. And I see myself in the Vespa, like I'm the one eternally placed on a wooden shelf for the rest of time to observe every dinner party, every college acceptance, every birthday happening around me. And I'll be there, the same, stuck in my knockoff porcelain casing, wishing for a way out or to be placed in a new girl's backpack, packed with bubble wrap and longing, and given a new chance to breathe the world. And I could call that fear for being the same as anyone else. But I'll choose to call a sheer craving for something more, this burning for one in togetherness, to be the match that stands out from the rest of the box, so I'll be picked to burn out first. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. That was wonderful. And what a champ, recovering from some tech issues. That is what we have learned, among other things here. All right, our next I remember is I remember how nice the weather always seemed wherever Wilton was. And our next reader is Parker. Here's Parker.
Hi, I hope my audio's working. Okay. I'm from McCalla, Alabama, and I'm going to read a couple of erasure poems. So I'm going to share my screen since the look is kind of important, and I hope it's working. Are we good? Okay. These are erasures of the same poem, which is Phase 1 by Daruma Ahmed, but they are different. They're about different things. For the last of living life, now, I say no, as a thought. Vision after sleep, when the dark overtakes love. A bag, heedless on return. Rain books to yourself. Work instead of singing. Your voice fails. Gushed, cruel and mean. Feel awkward with you. Treat you with contempt. I love your loneliness, unable to give others this world. And here's the second one. You, your life, seedlings you first hide in afterbirth, by the baby, repeatedly yours, fearing your propensity to lose, drive back for rain, for yourself, punctuate the truth, for mostly voicing to hear is forgiveness, relieve pigeons of prophets, feel with reason, for you worried you had no center, deserve a capacity for loneliness, be forgiven.
Thank you, Parker. That was wonderful. All right. Our next, I remember. I remember feeling alive in my writing for the first time in months. Our next reader is Maya Miller.
Yeah, hi, I'm Maya. I'm from Los Angeles, but I'm currently in Crested Butte, Colorado. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from an essay titled Christ, or Maybe John Lennon, in a Prison Waiting Room. In small town Georgia, the prison plays Christmas music over the waiting room speakers on the 4th of July. My mother hands my brother and me $2 bills for the vending machine. We buy Snickers bars and then lay down on the floor to watch the moths clicking in the light fixture slowly grow still. I will tell my father about the ramen we cooked in the motel coffee pot the night before. He will say something like, "Sounds like a feast to me," or "I wish I could have been there." We will talk about small things for the next 3 hours. My father's voice, muffled and tinny, rung through the broken speaker at the bottom of the plastic phone. I will tell him about the crabs I'm going to catch with a chicken leg and some twine, how the man who owned the dock said he would boil them for me. My father will say he remembers the 4th of July last year. You kids frying in the sun like eggs on the pavement, the dogs making messes of their water bowls, the way their fur smelled like Fritos and coconut shampoo. Later that night, the air still so thick I could swallow it whole, I will listen to John Lennon sing Happy Xmas, War is Over, as fireworks light up the bluff. My Softa, rendered mute long before I was born, could not speak in words other than time to change the batteries. But she could sing. I remember my mother's voice in my ear the first time we went to speak with Judge Kelly. Don't tell them we're Jewish. Dad can come home sooner if they think we celebrate Christmas. At a time in my life when everything felt confusing and unpredictable, when the lines that had previously defined my existence became increasingly blurred, this rule made survival seem easy. And so I started listening to Christmas music when I was angry, when I was afraid, when I felt powerless, when nothing else made sense. My Softa, trapped in a sentence, found her way out through song, and I intended to do the same. During the time of my father's incarceration, I used up all of the remaining space on my hand-me-down iPod, downloading Christmas music.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much. Shout out to all of the summer workshop alumni. I just took a quick glimpse at the YouTube chat, which is apparently the place to be. And there are so many summer workshop alumni there. So I miss you all. I adore you all. So I'm so glad you're here. Our next, I remember learning how to write about my body and feel like I am art. Our next reader is Wilton.
Hi, I'm Wilton Graves from Asheville, North Carolina, and I'm reading an excerpt from an essay I wrote about what a piece of charred firewood I found one morning on a hike means to me. For some context, because I'm not reading the large majority of my piece, I was with my three best friends in one of the most beautiful spots my home has to offer, Max Patch Trails and Campground. So this is called Trail Runners. Its charred black remains dare me as it sits on the corner of my desk. To someone else, someone that wasn't there, a piece of burned firewood means nothing. It might get ash on their belongings, clutter their desk, or in general appear unsightly. To me, this piece of firewood is everything. I can still see the red sun against the mountains, peeking above the clouds. Max Patch was an hour-and-a-half drive, and we had departed in the early hours of the morning, desperate to escape the mental and physical prison of quarantine. We had been awake all night. We were too excited and nervous to sleep. The meadow around us made us feel like we were on top of the world. Nothing could stop us. The dandelions and buttercups that splattered the green grass glowed in the early light, giving the appearance of a golden field. We didn't know if we should talk, play music, or just revel in the beauty around us. When we gazed out onto the tops of the ridge, the mountains looked as though they were large reptilian beasts lounging and basking in the sun. We didn't even have to speak. Bearing witness was enough. Eventually, we decided to go for a walk. And this is after a couple paragraphs. When we finally began our voyage, it was refreshing to be reminded that we had nowhere to be. We didn't have to adhere to anyone's schedule, and we had no extra stress. In a new world with a global pandemic filled with uncertainty, we were now blissful in our ignorance of the immediate future. Our only goal, our only motivation was the journey and the destination, and our only fear was losing ourselves on the trails. We took turns almost at random, keeping track of our choices on Chase's notes app on his phone. As we traipsed through the sylvan wonderland, we were almost taken aback by the lush rainforest that surrounded us. We lived in a beautiful place nestled in the mountains, but it was rare that we would all find ourselves in the wilderness. It was easy to lounge about inside, playing video games and listening to music, and it was hard to make plans with a group of teenage boys. The spontaneity of this particular activity spoke to our group's ideals. We had been friends throughout all of high school, grown with each other, and watched as each of us underwent the metamorphosis from boy to man. Now, our trail was coming to a close. We found it best to focus at the one at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilton. Our next, I remember. I remember the summer when I spent 6 hours of Zoom online a day, a task almost everyone I talked to thought was absurd. Our next reader is Jen.
Hi guys, my name is Jennifer. All right, you can't hear me. Okay, I'm going to be reading to you guys my direct address. Prologue. In the upcoming memoir, you may wonder who Lizzie is. Is she a person or is she me? All I have to say is that either way, you are right. Lizzie is me, but she is also a person. In a way, she was someone I created, someone that spent time with me, that distracted me from all the pain I was feeling and made me smile and laugh. She was an extension of me, but a complete different person. I was pessimistic, shy, quiet, panicky, cold, and immature. She was optimistic, open, loud, confident, outgoing, brave, and wise. She was the result of anxiety's getting to me. She was the result of living in a household that each day broke me down, brought me close to insanity, and drowned me in hate, sadness, and loneliness. She was everything I wanted to be. Looking back, the fact that she embodied these traits and that she was an extension of me in a way tells me that I can be those traits. And I have already started taking on some of those traits. So take Lizzie as a complete different person or take her as if she's me. Either way, you are right. All right, this is the direct address. Dear Lizzie, I still remember you. After all, you were with me when everything in my life had gone wrong. Sometimes I forget about you, and when I suddenly remember you, I curse myself for having forgotten you in the first place. I wish I could never forget you. And yes, I know you'd say I told you to stop being so negative while playfully poking me to make me smile. But I can't help it. You just disappeared one day and I still don't know why. You were a blessing in my life that was too good to be true. I was so sure that one day you would disappear, that you were too good for me. But the moment you disappeared from my life, everything came crumbling down. I still remember the day in the bathroom of the old house when you disappeared. How I looked for you and found nothing but absolute silence. For some reason, in the moment in time, I knew you were gone, And I cried. I cried for having lost a part of me, for knowing that one day you would disappear, yet letting myself get close, and for not cherishing the moments we had together, having decided to let myself get close to you. I wish I could remember more about you instead of the day you disappeared, and those other few days where you would calm me down and make me laugh. I wish I could spend more time with you. I wish you could see what I've become and see how far I've gotten. I think you'd be proud. I really do. I can grieve and I can cry, but at the same time, I know that you would want me to move on with my life, to use what I've learned from you to become a better person, to smile, keep my head up, and keep moving forward. Lizzie, I have done that. I have moved on, and I can't help but regret things. Meeting you was one of the best parts of my life, and I will never regret meeting you, but I will always regret not remembering more, not just about you, but about the moments we shared together. I wish that my primary memory about you wasn't about the day I lost you, but about the days we spent together, laughing and smiling. If you looked at me now, I wonder what you would say. Would you be proud of me, Lizzie? Are you proud of me? I hope you are. I've taken everything you taught me to heart, and I am trying to be more positive. I'm trying not to dwell in the dark too long, and I know it's bad for me. I'm trying to smile more often, and I'm no longer letting other people silence me. Sometimes I don't think you realize just how much you've affected me. You really changed me a lot, and I don't think I would have come this far without you. Things in my life have changed drastically. I'm not the little girl I used to be. I've grown stronger, and I've learned just like you told me thousands of times before. Tears aren't a sign of weakness. They are rather a sign that the emotion you're experiencing is so strong that your body needs to let it out. So many of the things you said to me are now becoming true, and I wonder how you would have known these things. Did you also go through something terrible? What am I saying? Of course you have. After all, you are me and I am you. You are nothing but an extension of who I am, or rather, who I used to be. The child, full of optimism, warm smiles, laughter, and hugs. I really wonder where you've gone. Even though you're me, I miss you terribly, and I constantly search for you when I remember you, and I forget to when I don't remember you. You're a part of my life that will never be entirely forgotten or remembered. Sometimes I like it like that, and sometimes I hate it. Other times, I simply am grateful that I could still remember you, that my memory hasn't erased you as it has deliberately erased other countless memories of my childhood. I'm grateful that I met you. No, I'm grateful that you used to be part of me. Even though you're now gone and the empty void in my heart feels heavy, I'm greatly thankful that we got to know each other, that we used to be together as one. Sometimes I find myself wondering if you still really are gone or if you're here and you're still a part of me. So to you and whoever else reads this, I ask, Lizzie, are you there? That's it.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for that. Our next, I remember the sheer terror of my air conditioner clicking on when it was my turn to speak. Our next reader is Julia Lingenfelter.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I live in Galindo, PA, and this is an excerpt of my object essay. My family has always had a strong desire to be surrounded by green. Every spring, my mother plants a wide variety of flowers to adorn the front yard. Every day, right after dinner, my dad's alarm goes off for him to tend to the floor in our backyard. We have a family fern lovingly named Stan that has been in the family longer than I have. My brother keeps a section of him, nicknamed Bernie by his girlfriend, in a Chicago apartment 8 hours away from the rest of us. My sister, in her desire to live in the heat, has recreated part of the desert and a large pot of succulents she grows in her bedroom. Even I, with my lack of maternal instinct and green thumb, keep a plump blob of a cactus perched up on the windowsill. It didn't last long as the newest member of the family, as just 2 months after I was born, my brother decided to plant the seeds of his afternoon snack. My parents, already dealing with the stress of a newborn, were worried about the disappointment my 7-year-old brother would face when nothing sprouted in that little terracotta pot. However, despite the odds, a little piece of green shot up out of the dirt, and in that year, my family welcomed 2 little miracles, myself and an apple tree. 2 years later, as my family packed up everything except the kitchen sink, my parents once again fretted over the fate of the young tree and whether it would take to the soil of our new house. Sure enough, determined to thrive, the sapling situated perfectly into its new area, just as I situated perfectly into mine. We watched each other grow, curious at the different development the 2 of us made with age. One sickly hot summer day, before 5th grade, I was so filled with a desire to know exactly how the small green apples tasted that I instinctively reached up and picked one of the fruits. Instantly, the overpowering sour taste flooded my senses and dried out my mouth. I spit the barely chewed apple in the grass and angrily kicked it into my neighbor's yard. The next day, I stood in the searing sun and practiced the national anthem on my saxophone with 60 other middle schoolers. We were preparing to play at the PNC Park Stadium before the Pittsburgh Pirates played like we did every summer. Because of my experiment the night before, all day I fought the urge to vomit into my mouthpiece. It was safe to say I learned my lesson to not eat the apples that grew in my front yard. I would later choose that same tree to base my 5th grade biology project on. At that point, I had forgiven him for his betrayal from a few months earlier.
Thank you, Julia. I remember early mornings and scrawled handwriting. I remember mutilating pages and pens. a running faucet. Our next reader is Pauline.
Hi, my name is Pauline. I'm from the Philippines, but now I live in New York City. So I will be reading an essay about my pen that I wrote for my object essay poem. So it was tradition to transition from pencils to pens when you reach fourth grade in my elementary school. No one knew exactly how this started. Perhaps someone verbally decreed that moving to a new school building meant using a new writing utensil. At first, writing in pen was daunting. In lower grades, we were used to flipping our pencils to erase any mistake on our papers. But with pens, we had to grab our whiteouts to erase the mistakes. Eventually, all of our teachers required us to write in pen to help us get accustomed to the new normal. I used any pen I could find for school. I didn't think the kind of pen mattered anyway. Then, around sixth grade, I heard my classmates gushing about a specific brand of pen. It was a Pilot G-Tech gel pen. My classmates claimed that this gel pen was quick drying and its ink lasts long. Interestingly, it was the first pen I heard that was refillable. Among its lids, the two most used ones were the 0.3mm and the 0.4mm. Curious to see what the hype was all about, I decided to check out the pen in my local bookstore. I saw its price, 70 pesos for a pen. That sounded absurd. Or maybe I'm just frugal. Rather than wasting my money, I left the bookstore without any pen in hand. When I began high school in the Philippines, almost everyone was using the G-Tech gel pen. I was pressured to purchase one for myself, since I didn't want to be left behind this pen phenomenon. In seventh grade, I finally purchased my first black Pilot G-Tech gel pen with a 0.4mm width. When I first wrote with this pen, the experience was surreal. There was a mysterious impetus that this pen emitted that made me love it and hold on to it for dear life. Just like what my sixth grade peers said, the pen was indeed quick drawing and flowed smoothly on paper. Since this pen was highly coveted, anyone who saw a misplaced pen in a classroom without identification will steal it right away. I ensured to protect this pen as much as I could. Skipping to the last paragraph. The school year ended with a few ink left to spare. The pen wasn't in its prime quality anymore. My past back in the Philippines was something I wouldn't trade for anything, but I had to stop myself from being so attached to it that it hindered me. Just like the ink left, I still have remnants of my past self, but not as much as it used to be. I decided to place this black Pilot G-Tech with a 0.4mm pen in my memory box, burying a part of myself that I am ready to let go of. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. I remember being surprised by how much I could connect with people over a Zoom screen. Our next reader is Sophia Moore.
Okay, hi. I'm Sophia Moore. I'm from Los Angeles, California. And this whole piece is an I remember type piece. It's called Lunch Hour, You and Me and Your First Barbecue Chicken Pizza. I remember the sweat on my palms as I shook, concealing my phone in my backpack. I had never broken school rules like this. I remember how slowly the menu loaded and how frantically I looked from screen to screen, pretending to learn the Spanish subjunctive when I really just wanted to order my pizza. I remember thinking that my teacher caught me fiddling on my phone, but he said nothing. His eyes kept my secret. I remember how I had never had a real first date like this, how confusing my relationship with the boy was. Were we, weren't we? I remember wanting to know what we were. I remember feeling so stupid, so 17. Then I remember seeing him, standing, waiting, hands thrust deep in his hoodie pockets, wishing for someone to arrive. He was shy, nervous. He ran his hands through his hair, scanning the crowd, departing for lunch hour. I remember meeting him with a smile and the way his legs carried him effortlessly towards the pizza parlor when the conversation would not. I remember struggling for words, stressing how busy or interesting my life was, desperate to prove my worth to him. My tongue got in the way. So 17. I remember looking up at him, at his freckles, and wondering what he was thinking. He remembered holding the door open for her, the warmth of the parlor alleviating the brisk December day. Southern California had never looked so gloomy. She had never looked so radiant. He remembered her shaking hands and the way she gripped her pink wallet. She was insistent on paying for him, rambling about being able to carry her weight because he was paying for the movie tickets after all. He remembered smiling at her absurdity, her frizzy hair and overwhelming trench coat. He remembered sitting at the counter. She was so close, so sweet. Eye contact. She remembered the walk back to school with the pizza box in his right hand and his left hanging loose at his side. The pizza box would become remnants of where they had been. His left hand would become her favorite to hold. She remembered coming so close to his face, so near to the warmth of his breath, red onions maintaining their hold on his tongue. She remembered wondering why it was the barbecue chicken pizza that she chose. Was that so selfish of her? He said she could pick, but what if he didn't like cilantro? As she panicked next to him silently, she wondered, would they have been closer to kissing if she had picked the pepperoni? Because, of course, it mattered. Doesn't it always? Fickle matters of the teenage heart. She remembered feeling so young. She remembered loving the way his arm pushed up against hers and the contentedness of his easy conversation about Rhode Island and How I Met Your Mother and squirrels. She remembered loving the way she had to look up at him, letting her serious, resting gaze slip as she tilted her face skyward, so vulnerable to someone she hardly knew away from her phone screen. She remembered thinking that she was in love with him, or if not presently, she would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. I remember the first day and realizing how many people I could have met, but now I can visit. Or soon, later, you can visit. Our next reader is Seer.
Hi, I'm Seer, and I'll be reading an excerpt from an essay that I wrote called My Walk or Die. I bought my first pair of Converse when I was a freshman in high school. It was a chilly November evening on Black Friday. After months of research and pondering over the financial investment, I finally decided to make the $50 purchase. As soon as my family and I walked into JCPenney, I beelined to the women's shoes department, and there they were. It was almost as if the fluorescent light bulbs were shining a heavenly light on the beautiful sneakers. There they were on the dingy gray shelf, calling me. I gracefully walked over and looked for the sneakers I wanted. The Chuck Taylor All-Star Black Low Top Shoe size 9 in women's, just like the website said. I grabbed the skinny black box and opened it for the first time. The smell of new rubber filled my nose. I sat down on one of the chairs and tried them on, and they were just like I imagined. The white stitching on the edges stood out against the black canvas and curved perfectly under my ankle. The crisp white laces laid on the tongue of the shoe meticulously intertwined, and the bright white soles flawlessly displayed the Converse logo on my heel. These shoes were made for my feet. I wore my Converse every single day. I would wear them to school, the grocery store, the park, and anywhere that would require shoes. After wearing them for a couple of months, the rubber and canvas molded to the shape of my foot, and it reached the point where I didn't feel like I was wearing anything when I put them on. They eventually became an extension of my body. They were my go-to shoe, my walk or die. The tight laces against my foot reassured me that I fit in with the rest of the crowd.
Thank you, Seer. Lots of Converse vibes among us. I remember the disappointment in Jamie Lee's voice. You're muted, my friend. Our next reader is Autumn.
Hi, I'm Autumn, and I'm going to read an excerpt from a free write that we did in a craft session where we had to write about our own body. What I remember about my body is that I used to not feel the way I do about it now, that it used to be something I wanted to wrap up and ship away, somewhere far where I would never see it again. I remember its shape and how it changed from a neutral thing to something that people wanted to start paying attention to. I want to know what my body truly looks like. I want to know what my body has to say for itself when I treat it a certain way. if it would celebrate or be so upset it would make itself sick. I want to know if it's always loved me back, no matter what I did. I want to know if it approves of the people I've given it to. I want to know what it thinks of me. My body grounds me every night as it lulls itself to sleep, when it forces me to do things such as brush its hair or fix itself in a mirror. Sometimes I feel forced to care for it. I'm looking for some peace of mind outside of my body, something that tells me that everything I do every day is for something or on the way to something. I'm looking for someone to speak to me the way I speak to myself, except knowing more answers. My body has uplifted me in ways that I do not expect, in eyes that travel down it or with thoughts that are made inside of it that could only be made from my body. My body has a mind of its own. I wonder if it knows when I'm talking about it. Some days I carry my body, other days it carries me, dragging me along. Sometimes I'm so wrapped up in every single other thing that I forget one. My body is temporary.
I can't believe that was a free write. Thank you, Autumn. Wow. I remember Amanda, aka Pancake Mandy, playing the little-known indie song Old Town Road during open mic and everyone utterly jamming. Our next reader is Tyler.
Hello, I'm Tyler. I really hope you can hear me and that my internet holds up. This is an excerpt from my object essay. It is about my backpack, my lovely, lovely backpack. Consider this an ode, basically. All right. So what's the magic now, on the threshold of adulthood? I can fit my life into my backpack, and I have. It's a code I trust, a code written into my fibers. It's the earliest thing I know, to put together and vanish. On nights when things grew rocky at home, when I could no longer stand the smell of stale alcohol on my father's breath and dollar store perfume of women I didn't know, I'd stuff an outfit on top of my biology textbook and head for Vivi's. Just like in 4th grade, when my father came and took me from my grandparents, took me from my mother, and all I could think to do was throw some clothes into my math folder. The versatility reminding me I could pack myself away into a pair of jeans and hoodie if need be, no matter my age. Reminding me that getting by was not something to be ashamed of, instead something to take pride in. I've been doing what everyone else is doing my whole life times 10. My backpack's a token to my collapsibility, my shape-shifting. I can seep into the cracks of anyone's couch, the back seat of a car, the floor, a musty chair, and still be up bright and early, making myself and everyone else coffee, wearing the hipsterest outfit known to man. And you know what you'd say? Cool fit. I like the backpack. I needed magic in high school, or at least the illusion of magic, to make it through when things got hard. My powers came from realizing what I could make of myself. The magic was the music, the shoes, the look, everything I could stuff in 22 by 12 inches. The magic became not the protagonist overcoming, rather the protagonist in the midst. The protagonist blending ice cream until 1 a.m. for rich folks' tips. The protagonist smoking cigarettes on somebody's dock with 5 or 6 other wounded teens. The protagonist driving around aimlessly, windows down, bass blasting. Most nights, I didn't know if I'd be coming home, or if I'd ever even own my own home. The unimportant things I understood were the big things. I understood the things that happened to me as a kid never stopped happening, only they grew up, took on different faces, said meaner words, like that'd be what finally broke me. The important thing was tightening my backpack straps, proving everyone wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. I remember forcing myself not to be scared to ask to be included, and I think it's paid off. Our next reader is Eddie.
Hello, my name is Eddie. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. My dog is making some noise, but hopefully she will stop. That wasn't my dog, but there's another one. My essay is called In Every Generation, Middle School Sucks, and I'm reading an excerpt of it right in the middle, but I think you can figure it out. Most memories of 7th and 8th grade have swirled themselves together into a jumbled mess deep within my brain in utter disregard for time and space. With that said, I remember the stumble into 7th, leaving larger bruises. Earlier in middle school, I still bore the confidence of the dragon-loving elementary schooler I had been before. Back then, my friendships were scattered, unreliable maybe, but I knew them and I trusted them. With time, though the clouds in my brain will not let me near a justification for the sudden quality of this shift, these bonds grew faulty. I started to see our dynamics in full, that a few had been hurting me and I had outgrown others. What followed felt like countless hours making mental lists of the friend groups I wasn't a part of, as the self-awareness that comes with age stranded me in a feeling of constant dogged separation. With Buffy and her friends, my thoughts were not as sharp. The sinking feeling that lingered after every class conversation dissipated, and next to Willow, I didn't feel like a mistake. Yet the show didn't end with the finalization of her insecurities. Right before my self-deprecating eyes, I saw Willow Rosenberg grow into one of the most powerful characters on the show. I saw she had a place to go. Seeing her gain confidence, become an incredible witch, stand up to a goddess, help save the day in ways no one else could, allowed for me to comprehend what the adults who spoke of things getting better were saying. If I was early Willow, I had 6 more seasons to develop. Listening to others proselytize about improvement framed it as an impossible task. Seeing it felt different. Over frantic half-hour lunch periods, through excited sentence fragments that came out of my mouth all too fast to filter, I made attempts to relay this wonder. They transferred to the ears of my friends in babble. Reasonably so, I suppose. They were irritable in return. But I honestly couldn't care. I knew this made me happy, which was a coveted thing that I was learning the people around me were not able to give me. Thanks.
Thank you, Eddie. I remember not knowing how this workshop was going to work out or if I was going to connect with people. I remember being just an hour into workshop, thinking about how wrong I had been. Our next reader is Sophia DeGrande.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay titled AIDS Trip. It was my 3rd time hanging out with Valerie, and I had never been to Philly AIDS. Who names their shop after an STD? They donate to AIDS organizations. Their stuff is dope. The shop was 3 stories tall. Its floors were lined with figurines, and it was packed with clothing. Speakers hidden along the ceilings played songs ranging from 90s rock to 2018 indie folk. By the 2nd rack, I discovered a pair of baby blue balloon-cut jeans. Holy shit, look at these. I elbowed Val, who was turned to a rack behind me. You need to try those on. She grabbed my wrist, leading me to the fitting rooms. They were closet-sized and covered by shower curtains instead of doors. Allen Ginsberg's Vomit Express bled through the speakers as I slid the jeans over my legs. Oh my god, they're perfect. The Philly AIDS jeans were the cheapest pair of jeans I'd ever bought. At the price of $4, they were a deal I couldn't deny. There was a dark blue square of denim on one of the butt pockets that I could only assume was once covered by a patch, and the only hint at branding was the word Xena engraved on the button of the jeans. At first, I was too embarrassed to wear them. They were extremely 80s, and I didn't wear jeans much. I think it was a sensory issue. I hated the way denim scratched at my legs, especially if I hadn't shaved in a while. These jeans felt good on me, but I feared that wearing them would be too much of a statement. I figured pants as special as these were reserved for fashion school students or Instagram models. I'd grown comfortable wearing darker, softer clothing, but I eventually forced myself into wearing them on the first day of junior year. As cliche as it may be, I felt I was given a sort of permission to share a new piece of clothing with the entrance to a new school year. My classmates didn't think much of it, too focused on their own first day outfit choices. The jeans quickly became an 11th grade staple. They met the subway each morning, the 8 different desks I used at school, and the second landing of the stairwell I sat in to eat my lunch at 2 o'clock. On weekends, they leaned against ice cream-covered countertops and scratched against the gravelly surface of my friends' rooftops.
Thank you, Sophia. I remember when 95% of our workshop group didn't know what water ice was, or should I say water ice. Our next reader is Larry.
Hi, my name's Larry, and I'm from Fremont, California, and I'll be reading an excerpt from one of my essays. I stuck my hands back into my pockets, full of sweat. Clenching my fist until my knuckles turned white, I looked back and saw that our 5th grade PE teacher had come out with a clipboard and a handheld timer. Mild day. For me, it was the worst day of the week by far. Every other day, I'd happily sit down at the lunch tables by myself, buying double portions of the chicken quesadillas they sold at the cafeteria, indulging my growing stomach with oils and fats that I knew I shouldn't be consuming. But on mild days, I'd always starve myself to attempt to shave my time off by a few seconds. I needed to do that. I needed to look good for myself, for my classmates who ran a 6-minute mile, for my PE teacher. As I lined up on the sand and gravel track, I began to fear that I wouldn't finish the exact 6 3/4 laps that counted as a mile in our minuscule track. Fear that I wouldn't be able to hide my chubby arms anymore. As the sound of a shrill whistle pierced through the hot afternoon air, I forced my tired legs to move forward as the whirlwind of sand grains flew past me. 1 minute in, I thought my lungs were going to collapse and I was going to fall down on my knees. The thought of feeling worthless carried through me as I continued to clutch my shirt with my hands, as my face turned red and I tried to hold back my tears. Over the summer after the school year, I slowly began to find my way. I reconnected with individuals that I can still call my friends today, and I finally began to believe that I fit in. Gradually, I stopped binging food and then feeling guilty after. I know that even now, I still have a long way to go, but now I look back on what got me through one of the darkest times of my life, and it was to reform positive connections with those I love. It's hard to go through something alone, and eventually, I began to have a strong support system that I treasure above all else. It is the small things that make me now. My life has been like an ocean wave, but I'm happy to say that I'm doing my best to keep riding on a particularly high one right now.
Thank you, Larry. I remember running down the stairs to grab water between Al's 5-minute craft session breaks. Our next reader is Krisha.
Hi everyone, I'm Krisha. I'm from Milburn, New Jersey, and this is an excerpt from an as yet untitled piece that I began in one of the craft workshops and then developed more later. I don't know what to tell you about 6th grade, except that it doesn't feel real anymore. The Wednesdays felt like lead, and the Fridays felt like clouds, and I think all of March felt like soap and air and dust. That year, the autumn wore down one day at a time, the way limestone crumbles into hot white sand, and winter swirled up sometime in December and caught us like a thick gray cloak. There's an independent ice cream place in downtown Milburn. It's your typical washed-out suburban storefront with chipped white paint and wooden boards and a hand-painted sign that tries just a little too hard to look artistic. On rainy Fridays, we walk down there from the middle school, struggling under the weight of our backpacks and the warm humidity of the air. I remember how the rain speckled our shoulders, how Amelia tried to prove her dauntlessness by changing her flavor every week, and how Milo always kept it safe, with vanilla and chocolate sprinkles. Ice cream tastes different in the rain. It's softer on the tongue somehow, and it's a lighter kind of cold. It mutes your colors, turns car radius to static, and dims all the lights until they're liquid. We tried to keep our ice cream safe, but the rain caught it anyway, and it left the pads of our fingers sticky and sweet. I was the kind of kid whose heart rate acted like a wildfire. I was afraid of escalators until the 5th grade, and I jumped and flinched every time a train came rattling into the station. I cried over butterflies and books, and yes, once over spilled milk. I was the kind of kid who never fit in except with misfits, the kind who spent recess trying to levitate pumpkins with a stick that I was told was a wand and knew wasn't. But those afternoons, with the ice cream, with the rain, my heart rate slowed. I felt brave.
Thank you, Krisha. I remember showing my dogs to everyone in the workshop. Our next reader is Joyce.
Hi everyone, I'm Joyce. I'm from Livingston, New Jersey, and I'm going to be reading an excerpt of a piece I wrote about a pair of shoes. They sit at the pit of my basement, almost pretentiously pristine, encased and embalmed like twin mummies, except instead of linen and fragrant spices, they're wrapped in tissue paper and the faint scent of maple floorboards. The cardboard sarcophagus is inscribed with abstract hieroglyphics of basketball hands and a cryptic message, 6.5Y UAGS Curry 4 mid. Those Curry 4s were my first and last pair of basketball shoes, an artifact of a single season of high school freshman basketball. I had meticulously handpicked those specimens from a sea of iridescent, beveled, and paint-splattered sneakers, swimming like tropical fish on the floor-to-ceiling shelves at my local mall's finish line. This was only after I'd visited nearly a dozen different retail and shoe stores on 2 different shopping trips spanning 2 weekends. Prior to that, I had spent countless hours researching, reading reviews, and compiling detailed descriptions of the traction, durability, appearance, and of course price of a bevy of shoes in a 20-page Word document. Even before all that, I had to convince my mom why it was both extremely necessary and rational to fork over $120, a $40 disparity from the most expensive shoes I'd ever owned, when I already owned a pair of perfectly good sneakers. But they're not basketball shoes, I insisted. Just like I wouldn't wear slippers to church, I believed it was unfitting, simply heresy, to play basketball in my running shoes. In a sport that involved rapid side-to-side cutting and demanding vertical leaps, I couldn't afford exposed ankles and flimsy cushioning, else run the risk of an almost certain ankle sprain or the fracture of my 5th metatarsal base. More than that, I knew deep down that the sneakers I had just wouldn't cut it when on the first day of practice, the 10 other girls on my team, wearing color-coordinated outfits and with hair pinched tightly under Nike headbands, began pulling out their basketball shoes, while I waited off to the side in my faded t-shirt with Venezia peeling and my non-basketball shoes shuffling nervously. I watched them, envied them, for the way they stepped so surely in their sneakers, the way the ball cut so cleanly between legs and laces, and the way they'd sail up, 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 so smoothly for a layup that I could see wings practically sprouting from their heels. I already felt like an anomaly, an outsider in many other ways. I was one of 3 Asians, a number that was surprisingly on par with my town's Asian makeup. I was unaware of rap culture references, and I had only a year of 8th grade recreational basketball and a 2-week YMCA basketball camp under my belt. Whereas most of my teammates grew up carpooling to basketball clinics and practices together, I spent my Saturday mornings and weekend nights going to Chinese school, taking art classes, and chatting on hangouts with a group of friends whose parents had all played Chinese poker with mine at some point. These were unignorable differences tethered to the way we breathed and believed, a culture we could not pass to each other as easily as a flick of the wrist and a chest-to-chest pass. Like dye spreading through a napkin, the desire to have basketball shoes became the paramount concern on my mind. I believed so fervently that they were 2 steps closer to becoming a more serious basketball player and a more serious member of my team, that I'd raise my right hand and place my left on a shoebox as someone would secretly swear me in and say, "Welcome to the team."
Thank you, Joyce. I remember the strawberry lemonade spilling on my computer keys. Our next reader is Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is a poem from the Poetry and Naming craft session. On the name Lily. I lay out nicknames like landmarks, become a cartographer, write topographical love letters and hate mail in the same curly font. It's that sticky sweetness of womanhood and how it trudges in the lowness of your throat, lulls and lulls, dropping on the uvula a succinct sucker punch to the jugular. My great-grand and I wear femininity like masks, us supple petals supposed to wilt in dry Arkansan heat, but like watermelon turn red and bloody. Talking to her now is like talking into a tunnel. Sometimes she'll recognize a name and whisper it back, like a mockingbird. Maybe she is a mockingbird with a long tail. I wonder what she did at 17 in the Dust Bowl womb of Earth. She cut Lily away as I do, fold it and forget it, leave it in a pile of shit somewhere in my room. It was for herself then to fall into a surname. I rest somewhere in the in-betweens, opting for the unassummingness of gray, a middle name empty enough to fill. It has such elseness. Maybe I was a flower once, when I was young and sounded like rain. Now I ripen too quickly and rot in the pantry, or maybe I wilt in the vase.
Thank you, Lily. I remember eating both breakfast and lunch as fast as I could during break. Our next reader is Sophie Young.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Because like my Wi-Fi is right now. I'm Young. I'm South Carolina, and I'm going to be reading the beginning of a piece that I wrote. It's called and Probably a Little Too Late. You don't know this, but Dylan took me to the ice cream store at the lip of Falls Park and told me everything. We sat in those brown leather chairs, the ones by the window. The ones you said could swallow a man whole. He was nervous. You put him in a sticky position, you see. But he'd known me since 4th grade and has a nose for lies. He removed and put his glasses back on several times, always using the corner of his shirt to rub out some invisible smudge on the lens. In between bites of mint chip, he told me how you pulled him aside the day prior, 20 minutes before our summer annual theater performance, and spent the whole time saying how sick of me you were, your best friend. I'm trying to remember all that you said, and to be honest, I may not remember every word correctly. The gist is always the same. You called me self-centered, backstabbing, fake. Summa, you know me well enough to imagine my reaction. I wanted to fold the whole store over myself and shelter in concrete for weeks. Joking. I knew he wasn't. I hoped he was joking. Everything he remembered 10 times over. And it's actually funny how much money like a grandfathered summer, and I found out through a mutual friend. I saw you 3 weeks later at summer camp, and when I walked across the courtyard lounging on the bench swing, legs flopped over the back like open hinges. You saw me upside down and made no space in the slot. What, you said, sharp. When I apologized for your loss, the first thing you said was not anything I expected. Who the hell told you? Why are you always in my business? I never meant to be, but that's what friends do, right? My business was always your business. My stories, yours. And then there were the times you guarded me in basketball and made me throw it with elbows into my gut for practice. You never faced the ball. Even when you had an open basket and your team was calling for you to shoot, you were too focused on keeping me from moving an inch. And later, when your shoulder was into my nose, so hard the little fatty cartilage kept popping all evening, blood spilling between my fingers and slinking down my throat, couldn't stop laughing. You stopped talking, you stopped sitting with me at lunch, never texted me back, took my same way a germaphobe takes a preschooler's sticky hand, slouched away from me in the hallway, and I thought, she must be busy. Thanks.
Thank you, Sophie. I remember the panic of 11:59 trying to open up Zoom on time. Our next reader is Kenzi.
Hi, so I'm Kenzi. I'm in Macon, Georgia right now. I'm going to be reading you 2 pieces that are poems from a free writing class that we did with Caitlin Moore. So, space. How can we describe distance as if it was distance that formed us out of serotonin molecules? Molecules built the void, a void overflowing with language. So why did the English language choose space as if to say void? Void means empty to us, but the universe's atmospheric pressure cannot be so simple as empty. Empty, as if protons, neutrons, nanoseconds, electrons, quarks, atoms, black holes, planets, time dilation mean empty. We philosophize the end of time through a fishbowl lens. So as I make love to an incomprehensible reality with my nearsightedness, I recognize space had no meaning until language forced one upon it. So too as this space between you and I has no meaning until we force one on it. We are estuary kings floating in anything but a void. This is the second piece. And the universe said, I love you. Suck me in, freeze me up. I'll love you long after I am gone. But I will not be forgotten, especially here, floating. Ice cold, but energy sizzling. My lifeless fingers will brush galaxies where you and I exist and are connected once again, but you'll never know this. You will watch me float behind the glass, and my exploding energy will never forget how much it loved you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenzi. I remember being inspired on the first day, hearing the pieces our teachers wrote, still not over them. Our next reader is Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm going to be reading a beginning excerpt of my essay called The Diary. My grandmother's hair is a wispy blonde, threaded with gold. It hides her white roots, covers the bald spot on the very top of her head, the empty spaces. In the sun, the short tresses illuminate, curls of light splitting into tiny rainbows along the glass window pane in her apartment. The curls are always bouncing slightly. Each step she takes with her cane, they bob as buoys in the sea. When I was younger, I always thought they were magical springs, stretching and compressing with every footfall. I am 14 when I walk into my grandmother's unit and see the ringlets more tightly coiled than usual, a still life on her cheeks. The left lock is tucked behind her ear, revealing a bulbous pearl clip-on. The right is draped over part of her penciled eyebrow. The eyebrow is not walnut brown, but the color of rouge lipstick. In the last year, she's forgotten which to use. The color of the lips that leave bright red stains on my cheeks when we hug, the same lips that sang me nursery rhymes when I was little and read Dutch folk tales on Sinterklaas. When I sit down next to her, I try not to let my eyes glue to her red eyebrows and instead concentrate on the painting over her shoulder by Rembrandt, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. There's Jesus and his disciples suspended on a boat. Obsidian sky crawls over the canvas, white foam gushing over the side with the crashing wave. The mast is lurched forward, and with it, the rest of the hull. A loose cable thrashes in the wind. One man clings onto the rope of the headsail with one hand, clutching his hat in the other. Hold on. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I remember the chat going wild for hashtag intern James because he is a hashtag frat boy. Our next reader is Solange.
Hi, I'm Solange. I'm from Maryland, and I'll be reading a part from an essay called The Sound of the Home I Never Knew. I'll read the first paragraph and then the last paragraph. My abuelo's hand resembles the earth. A blue and green web of veins cover his palms. Wrinkles, ridges, creases tell the stories of past childhood antics and adolescent mischief. Oceans of sunspots and scars indicative of a life spent as a farm worker. He tells me he was proud of his wrinkled hands, that they were a reflection of his dedication. His hands, much like him, are overworked and tired from his time spent trying to make a living as an immigrant decades ago. His hands find rest on the rondador, where they lay effortlessly on the bamboo pipes. Similar to pan pipes, a rondador has multiple pipes that gradually increase by length. The curvature of such an instrument seemed to be made to be held by my abuelo. And this is the last paragraph. I'll turn 17 soon, and I still have my abuelo's rondador that he gave to me years ago. It sits by my bookshelf, collecting a thin sheet of dust. I remember my abuelo's wide, excited brown eyes when I finally could play alongside him. He told me to never forget the sound of our country, that even if I was born and raised in America, that my blood was Ecuadorian. I tried to play it a few months ago. My hands felt clammy and awkward when I held it. Spit ended up everywhere, and the sound came out distorted, as if the instrument itself was complaining. The ease I once felt in playing my home country's national instrument is now replaced with confusion and embarrassment. I placed it back in my bookshelf, where it has become a mere decoration now, a harsh reminder of a past connection. The knowledge left me, the cracks in my brain leaking and spilling, with no regard to the amount of effort my abuelo put to cement it. I remember my abuelo telling me about this Incan instrument, how it was kept alive even when the Spaniards came over to Ecuador to colonize. Generations and generations of families kept their cultural history intact between these bamboo pipes. I'm ashamed to not know my culture, to not only to be able to speak Spanish, the language of Ecuador's colonizers, not Ecuador's native tongue, and even then I confuse it with English. I'm ashamed to have forgotten about my abuelo's efforts, to have forgotten about the sounds of the rondador. Thank you.
Thank you, Solange. I remember hearing make less sense. I still don't know what this means. Our next reader is Alfred.
Hello, my name's Alfred. I'm from California, and I'm reading an excerpt of my personal memoir titled Ugly, and it's about my stuffed animal dog that I have here. All right, Ugly. Other than a sibling, the thing I wanted most was a dog, some sort of companion I could be with. Mom and Dad told me they would never get a pet, especially when Mom had once been bitten by a dog when she was getting the mail. It'd be too much work, Mom said. We'd have to take it on walks, pick up its poop, wash it, Dad added on. I suppose it was for those reasons that I picked them out immediately. I plucked them from the packed box of stuffed animals, stickers, and spider rings that my kindergarten teacher kept as rewards for completing homework. Well, at least I've always thought of the stuffed animal Pug as a him. I think it was because I thought female dogs had long ears, and he had very short ears. I remember a distinctly angry expression over his face, though the wrinkles directly above his eyes formed an obtuse angle opening up to the rest of his head. His mouth was also a little too big for me, so I bent up his nose a little to give him what I thought to be a more dog-like expression. I remember thinking, down you go, while I pushed the dog into my backpack. Upon some research, I discovered that a stuffed pug was a Thai beanie baby known as Pugsley. His name's Pugsley, I told Dad. Really? I think his name should be Ugly, Dad responded. He doesn't look cute. But look at that mouth. It's pitch black. How dirty. It looks like he eats from the trash. From that moment on, Ugly kind of just stuck. I insisted that his name was Pugsley, but over and over again, Dad would refer to him only as Ugly. I saw Ugly as a cute dog, a worthy substitute for that part in me that desperately longed for a pet, and to this day I swear that his droopy expression could placate Aries. Over the years, Ugly gained his own version of cataracts in the form of a clear white that plated his eyes and tiny worn-out holes over his body that would occasionally spill the beads he was composed of. He's seen a lot too. Since he came into our home, we've moved from our apartment to a 2-story house. I owe Ugly. He's been with me when I walked upstairs, put in earbuds, and replayed Smile until I actually felt like smiling, with his tiny head resting on my knee. He's been with me since I procrastinated on our Macbeth assignment, scribbling the 3rd page of 5 at 1 a.m. and having to wake up at 6 the next day. He's been with me since Andrew and Dylan were my best friends, and then Evan and David, and then Jonathan and Roger. He's been with me since our neighbor Mary's death, and part of me thinks that he remembers the day when Mary had cradled him in the palm of her hand and gently pressed him against my cheek. He's been with me most nights, in the same room, either on my work table sleeping on a bed of worksheets or on the carpet floor sleeping with his eyes open. He's been with me almost every dinner, where Dad would remark on what a troublemaker he is, and Mom would scold me for placing him too close to the food since his dust could dirty it. Thank you.
Wow. A lot of us are very emotional for Ugly. I remember my piece being workshopped, feeling of nervousness at first, then ease because everyone was so kind and understanding. Our next reader is Garcia Galindo.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and today I will be reading an excerpt from my essay, Learning How to Scream. 3rd grade was also the year of the Men in Dark Masks. It was a Friday in spring, and you came over to my house along with Gia, ready to play pretend and talk about our latest boy crushes. And for the first half of that afternoon, that was just what we did. We made popcorn and invented worlds with castles made of ice as we played hide and seek. After a while, Abu, with her short brunette wig and long flowing dress, offered to order us some pizza, to which you enthusiastically nodded, that never-ending vortex that is your belly excited at the prospect. But then, as we ran around the living room, breaking some of Mommy's rules, we stumbled on Abu, looking at the news on that huge old screen. At the center of the screen, there was a row of men with dark shields and masks. They looked like the knights Mommy loved telling me about at night, yet twisted and corrupted. People were running into the line as the men in dark masks hit them with black sticks. Abu, what is happening? I asked, wide-eyed. Abu looked at me sorrowfully for a second before responding. The UPR, University of Puerto Rico, students are protesting. But just as quickly as the moment started, it ended, and suddenly we were eating pizza while Gia described to us her latest crush. You always laughed silly at Gia's stories, and then Gia would complain that we didn't take her seriously enough before breaking into tears. It would take me years to understand that moment. Do you remember the hurricane? How we huddled in my bed until the water made a small pool in my room? How we ate Spam soup because that was about the only thing one could make besides cold sandwiches for weeks? We made a good team in those days. It's weird thinking back now, but I only realized things were far worse than the news on the radio said that day we volunteered at the Gawa Dialysis Center. People came in droves, far more patients than that small unit was used to. Most were scared for their lives, their usual dialysis centers destroyed by the hurricane. I've never seen fear and pain and sorrow and grief quite like what we saw on that 16-hour day. We kept coming back to help for weeks. At that time, we still believed the pleasant lie that we were all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I remember the brain within its groove. I am still a bit traumatized from the craft session. Our next reader is Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm from Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm reading basically an excerpt from my object essay, and it's about Chad, who is right here. So, in AP World History, my teacher handed out emotional support animals on the first day of class, saying, "You're going to need them." Mine was a stuffed tiger with bright green eyes and a shiny black nose. I loved him instantly. I originally wasn't sure what to name him, since his given name, Stripes, was boring and merely restated the obvious. He needed a more original name, something that stood out in a weird but good way. The answer seemed simple. He needed to be given a white frat boy name, because who in their right mind would name a cutesy stuffed animal Jackson or Noah or Kyle? Every day, my friend and I would come up with different possible names for him. He went by Richard, Evan, Brandon, Chase, Colin. I mean, the list goes on. Eventually, we settled on Chad, because High School Musical. I can still remember the first in-class essay that we had to write. It was worth a lot of points, and I was behind on several of the readings. I had my heavy textbook open on my desk, and in the 5 minutes before the essay prompts were handed out, I was frantically flipping through its pages as I tried to make sense of the historical figures and dates and locations that blended together in front of me, an unintelligible tornado of Times New Roman that made less and less sense the more I tried to control it. My hands began shaking, and I was so sure that this essay would be the reason why I failed AP World, the reason why I wouldn't get into college, the reason why I disappointed my mom, my teacher, myself. My face grew hot, and I started looking around furtively because the only thing I hated more than my own incompetence was other people noticing it too. Imposter syndrome is a real pain in the ass sometimes. But then, in the midst of my mental breakdown, I saw Chad. He stared at me, entirely unimpressed, and I felt him judging me. He was perched on the edge of my desk, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, he toppled onto the floor with a muted thud. Apparently, Chad would rather die than watch me to continue to live in the wreckage of the future. Message received. I took a deep breath and I tried to calm down. Did I get a perfect grade? Absolutely not. However, my grade was still far higher than it would have been if my brain was still mentally occupied with planning out my future Burger King applications. The rest of the year continued in a similar fashion. Chad took all of my tests with me, and my frequent staring matches with him helped me get out of my own head, which, as you've seen, was often a brutal and unforgiving place to be. I knew that when the year ended, I'd really miss having him by my side.
Thank you, Amanda. We have one reader left. Can you believe that? I remember receiving my acceptance letter for the KWH summer workshop, and I cried in joy. Our last reader is Charlotte.
Hey, can you hear me, by the way? So I wrote this poem when I was in the NAME workshop with Dr. Michelle Kransky. So yeah. Yeah, my dog is in the frame also. So this is titled Charlotte Frances Hughes. Olive does not have a middle name, just Patterson Olive. It makes her sound like someone famous, I say over dry toast with margarine. My middle name, Frances, is plain. It is a name that would wear oversized tees and drink skinny lattes, and when asked to describe herself, say she likes the color blue and dogs. Plain, plain, plain. Frances is from the country no one knows. Frances is someone who never spectacularly messes up or does anything spectacular, just lives in the same town as her parents. Today, on this green park bench across from Olive Patterson, I am leaving my middle name behind. It is a chip wrapper peeling with dirt that I'll throw away in a minute. I am uploading so many videos so I too can be famous. Imagine my ugly turned into unique, my name kept hot by the mouths of everyone in America. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Thank you, Charlotte. We did it. We just did 25 readers in an hour and 19 minutes. Pretty good. Thank you to all of our summer workshop students. I will weep publicly on Zoom for you tomorrow. I'm gonna keep it together right now. I also want to thank our amazing summer workshop team, David Marchino, Amanda Silberling, Izzy Lopez, James Chang. My colleague Andrew Beal has been very helpful behind the scenes with paperwork. All of our craft session instructors who joined us, you heard some of that work tonight. We're so grateful for all of them. Zach Cardner, thank you for handling the tech tonight. You are very good at all of that. And also, finally, we're grateful to Maury Povich for his support of this program. And we are so happy we get to do it. Finally, thanks to all of the summer workshop alumni and all of our craft session instructors and friends and family and other pals who joined us on YouTube and for hyping us up in the chat. We're so grateful to you. Thank you and have a good night, everybody.